Alright guys, so today's workout, purely cardio. No weights, pure cardio. And I loved every second of it. Now, I am an ex-boxer, an ex-martial artist, ex-bare knuckle fighter. And for me, my cardio always revolves around, well, you know, hitting the bag basically, or hitting people. It's a great way to get fit, great way to keep fit. So today what I did was 10 2-minute rounds on the bag. And you're going to see every single one of those rounds with 1 minute timed rests in between each round. Following that, I then did a 10-minute row and 4K on the bike, and then some swimming later on in the day. You don't see any of that. This is just purely a boxing video. I'm going to talk you through really just, I don't know, kind of give a little narration, commentary if you wish, on what I'm doing. So obviously we've got the first round here. I'm starting to speed up just a wee bit now. I always find that the first round is one of the slower rounds. It takes a little while to loosen off, you know, and the key to being a good boxer or good fighter is to be nice and loose in the shoulders and the hips. But that sometimes just takes a little bit of time, just getting back into the groove. And feeling the bag also, or feeling the person if you're sparring, you know, feeling their movements and kind of getting used to the rhythm. And once you get that sush, you know, it only takes a round to do it. Yeah, things start speeding up and getting much more slick. So I'm mixing in here some bare knuckle techniques. It's a little bit hard to demonstrate on the bag or to perform correctly on the bag, but we just saw a bit of chancery there. Now moving into some clinch. I'll describe what each one of the things are as they sort of come up. Here we have clinch work. It's basically where you hold the head of the opponent, pin them down, and you can deliver knees mostly to the opponent there. Right, round two, as I say, you can start to see, you know, things loosening off, things speeding up. So, you know, you had a couple of minutes to warm up now, as I say, feel the pace of the fight and everything. And you can start to sort of getting into that rhythm and start more experimenting with some of the combinations. Here we have what would be a furious side chancery on an opponent there. That's where essentially a headlock where you drag them over. You can either perform a cross buttocks throw, or you can, as I was pretending to do there, mimicking their throw punches to their isolated head. Mixing the punches up there from body to head. That's really one of the keys when it comes to fighting is throwing punches in bunches and from all kinds of little different angles and directions. You want to kind of drag the opponent's guard away from wherever you're trying to target. And the best way to do that is to hurt them somewhere other than where you're really trying to aim for. The win-win situation. They'll either keep their guard up, in which case you can pound the body, but if they drop their hands down to protect the body, well, you might be able to get a cheeky shot off to the head, or vice versa. Now, being a sort of bare knuckle fighter, I will say this, guys, that a lot of blows in bare knuckle typically do go to the body. So you see a lot of my punches will be going lower, not where the head of the opponent would be. Obviously, good reason for that. You punch someone in the head. You know, the head is made out of bone. It's big and solid. Yes, you can do a lot of damage. That's how you can knock people out, but it's also how you break your fists. So a lot of punches in bare knuckle fighting will go to the fleshier parts of the body, i.e. the actual torso itself. It's actually surprisingly easy as well to knock someone out with body blows. We all know that pain, right? Of being winded with a good solar plexus shot. Well, you know, you don't just have to hit the solar plexus, you know, you go for liver, kidney shots, even just a straight body blow to the center of the abs, essentially the toughest part of the body. It still hurts. Mixing in, throwing in some elbows and knees here. So I like to fight up close. I'm not really a ranged fighter. My reach for my height is quite short. So even though I'm taller than most people I've gone up against, being 6 foot, just over 6'2", if I end up fighting an opponent who's around my height or taller, then I always have the shorter reach. I've never really been able to outrange a like opponent. Also, my mentality is one of, like, I just like to get up close and personal. So consequently, I do like to do close range fighting. So you'll see from me elbows and knees, because these are very close range, good close range attacks. Another thing about the elbow as well, being bare knuckle. In bare knuckle, it's very, as I say, very easy to break your fist. The elbow allows you to go after, you know, as I say, the head and other tougher parts of the opponent's body without really worrying about breaking your fist. The elbow does a lot of damage, and you don't really have to worry about hurting yourself in return. Useful attack when going up high, whereas the fists are a great way of attacking the body. So you can see here, I'm engaging in the clinch. This is actually really a good, and they're moving into what is essentially a front chancery here. Doing this is a great way not only to, you know, help control your opponent, but it's also a great way to get some rest. Ultimately, if in doubt, if you're starting to puff out, you can slow the fight down by grabbing the opponent. But of course, within pugilism and most martial arts, unlike with boxing, the clinch is an active part of the combat experience, so to speak. You do strike your opponents, you do wrestle and grapple your opponents, so you need to take that into account, that it isn't a place where you can rest too much unless you've got a dominating hold upon the opponent. Mixing in a range of different elbows in there, so you've got your side or overhead elbows, you know, like you see in Muay Thai typically, but then some of the uppercut elbows as well. They're a little bit hard to throw, especially on a bag like this. You know, you typically need like an uppercut bag to practice them, but they're a great way to go in under the chin. You saw a push knee just then also. That's a nice little one to throw in there. It's not one you do too often, but it's a bit like a teep, a front kick. You can really barrel over your opponent quite effectively. Throwing in some feints here as well, so pretending to throw the jab, coming in, and in that case with the cross, and coming in with the other hand. You know, you want to play mind games with your opponent, really, and you need to practice that on the bag. So this here is in fighting practice, so this is where you're at close range with your opponent, but where there's no grappling going on. You simply exchange punches. It's a bit like a broadside on a, you know, old naval sort of warfare tactics. You just unleash upon one another as much devastation as you can. Right, good fun it is. I always like to throw cheeky jab on the way out. When you back away from your opponent does not mean that you can't still strike your opponent. You don't always be having to move forward, you see. You want to be moving side to side. You know, you want to be slightly unpredictable in your movements. Mixing in the lead hand, as you see, what I do, guys, you may have noticed this, I do change my stance quite regularly. So I go from my natural orthodox stance into southpaw stance quite regularly. I'm quite happy fighting in either stance. You know, I've been fighting for 30 years now, so I'm quite competent in doing so, quite comfortable at least in doing so. So by changing the stance, what you do is essentially you open up your opponent, you open up some potential new angles to come in at. It also helps share the damage. So if I was receiving punches here, instead of taking all the damage to my left side of my face, I can instead get some of it to go onto my right side as well. So you know, a problem shared is a problem halved in that sense. It's important that as the fight goes on, obviously both of you will be beginning to tire, but that you try to keep the pace, and in fact, if you can, increase the pace as time goes on. It's a great psychological effect on your opponent. As they're getting tired, all of a sudden the intensity starts, you know, gradually getting harder and harder. It can really, that alone can kind of break your opponent and force them to kind of like bow out. Here, I'm just really trying to keep things moving. You can see I'm starting to tire here at the end of the round. So as I'm getting more and more tired, You know, as I say, look, go straight in with the clinch or the chantry, slow down the fight. You don't have to be moving all the time, but you want to be active all the time. You know, there are active defenses, you know, head feints, lead hand feints, and just general movement with your footwork that can keep your opponent from attacking you if they're already anticipating attack. If you're an aggressive fighter, these kind of defensive, active defense techniques are a fantastic way of shutting down your opponent, even when you're doing nothing. Gives you a little bit of a break and keeps them nervous also. That's why it's good to throw in lots of different sort of variety of different things as well. You never want them to know what's coming. All right, so that's essentially a forearm bar there, or cross guard that goes across the face of the opponent where you bring the arm across. It's a defensive technique. You place it across the philtrum of the face and it can really shove the head of the opponent back, put them off balance. It stops them advancing closer towards you. Gives you, also opens up potentially their ribs for some knee strikes. Bag weighs 35 kilograms, fairly heavy bag, very solid bag, highly recommend it. Bad boy bags, very, very good quality bags. Obviously it does shift quite a bit here, as you can see. I do have it on a swivel mount also, so it does spin. As I get more and more tired as the rounds go on, it's quite funny because if you glance these bags when they're on a swivel mount, the glancing blows can kind of you hit the bag, but you can slide off a bit like if the opponent blocks your punches with a rolling shoulder defense, and it feels like a miss. And really, that's the key to being a good fighter, is learn how to miss correctly, because there's nothing worse. You know, you see it with these guys when, you know, on these boxing bags now, like, you know, the ones that come down and you hit them, it tells you how hard you hit it. You see the punches they throw. I mean, what the hell? They're winding up their punches, they're coming in, they're telegraphing everything. And you sometimes see it on like the blunders and stuff where people miss the bags and they fall over. They basically knock themselves out. They put themselves on their ass. It's quite interesting, really. So really, as I say, the key to being a good fighter is to learn how to miss correctly. You can see now what I'm starting to do as the rounds progress. I'm starting to experiment a little bit more, starting to throw in some more what's called in play, which is essentially dirty boxing, dirty fighting. So the headbutts are starting to come in. Obviously, in a real fight, you would start using these immediately, but they're a great leveler, taking most people by surprise. That was a very poor headbutt, that one just then. Really, when it comes to a headbutt, or Glaswegian kiss, as I will call them, because of my Glaswegian, well, I'm a half Glaswegian, aren't I? But basically, the Glaswegian kiss is something that you want to be pushing off from the back foot with. You don't want to be using your neck to develop the power. The reason why that you know, one of the penultimate headbutt that you just saw was for me not a good headbutt, is because I pulled my head back first before they can come in again. You know, I was trying to develop the power with the neck, and the reason I did that, as you saw just prior to that, my glasses came off when I did it properly, so I didn't want to break my glasses, so I had to change the way I was doing it to a certain degree. Well, we're 8 rounds in now. Obviously, you can imagine the fatigue's starting to build up here. Most fights would be over at this point. So, you know, obviously, you're going to want to end the fight as soon as possible if you're still continuing at this point. So this is, again, more in-play techniques you see there. That is essentially holding the back of the opponent's head, not this bit, but the bit before, you know, where the left hand goes out and kind of lingers out. That's not me range finding, that's me essentially doing what's called a standing chantry. It's where you place the hand behind the back of your opponent's head before bringing a punch in. Stops their head basically moving when you strike it, maximizes damage, obviously in the ring. in a boxing ring. Most of these techniques I'm showing are completely illegal, but bare knuckle boxing is a different ball game. It's a different animal, and obviously street fighting as well. Again, no rules. So I'm starting to open up a little bit more with a few of the combinations to the body blows there, essentially in fighting, because as you get more and more tired, it's more likely that your opponent is going to want to sort of close the distance in the same way that I mentioned earlier. They're going to want to try and smother you. They're going to want to try and get some breaks, and so this is where you start using more of your infighting techniques and keep to keep them at range. Well, keep them close to you, but not allowing them to smother you. It's quite a fine balance, really, but essentially you try to prevent the grapple and maximize the amount of damage that you're doing to them. At this point, when it comes to any type of fighting, I'm pretty old school when it comes to fighting. Of course, I was taught from knowledge that came from my grandfather, who was a booth fighter in the circus, bare knuckle fighter in the circus, and he always says, work the foundation, work the foundations, crumble the foundations, and then the rest of it will come crumbling down. And essentially what he meant by that is work the body first, break the body, and then go for the head at the end. Alright, things are slowing down a wee bit here. Fatigue, round 9, penultimate round is probably the hardest of rounds, because you want to try and keep pace, but you don't want to do so much pace that you don't have any energy left for the final round. So psychologically, this is perhaps the hardest round, trying to keep as much pace as possible whilst your body is, it is hurting by now. Your lungs are on fire, your heart is pumping. Yeah, but you just got to keep getting through it. If you get through the 9th round, then you're pretty much sorted, because the 10th round you can go crazy. What you saw then, I've done it a few times, that shove, that's called a triangle push, okay? And what I was mentioning in the previous round about keeping your opponent from grappling you. If they get too close, they don't want to infight you, they don't want to rough it up close, they're trying to grapple you, just shove them straight in the chest. Triangle push, it's something that I'll show on my other channel, Anything to Win. It's a great technique. In fact, you can actually end fights. It's a great way to open up most street fights, because people come into you, come close. You don't know obviously if they've got a knife, if they're going to hit you, if they're going to bottle you, whatever. First thing is bang, correct distance, and it shocks them. You shove them. You've seen how far that bag went. I won't really put much effort into it. That's a 35-kilogram bag. It's not an easy thing to move, and you see how flying it goes. It's an effective technique. You do that on someone about their chest, so it's quite high up in their center of gravity, they go flying, and they often will fall backwards onto the ground, especially if they've had a drink or two. You're seeing a little bit of powering going on there as well. As the bag's swinging into me, you notice the hand comes up. It just shows you, really, even if you've got low hands, you can block and parry still. Right, final round. Excuse me, my voice is getting my throat is getting very dry. So final round, this is where you really want to start opening up. You want to be going for, you don't want to be winning on points if that's the case. You really need to start finishing your opponent here. So some of the biggest shots are coming in. You're using things are going to get sloppy at this point, because you are tired, and as I say, you really want to finish your opponent at this point. Here, this looks very messy, but it's actually a very valid attack technique. These are called hit punches. Jack Dempsey used to do it towards the ends of his fights. When he knew the opponent was very close to being knocked out, he would throw these big, powerful hooks where the hands originate from the hips, as you see here. You can get a tremendous amount of power. Obviously, your defense is 0 at this point, if not worse than 0, but you can really end a lot of fights this way. A great example, I think it's in either round 2 or round 3. Jack Dempsey brings out these really massive hooks to destroy Jess Willard, and he absolutely demolishes his opponent in that case. Obviously, you might want to keep the pace high, but you still need to fight clever. Don't be afraid to grab hold of your opponent. But bear in mind, you see here, this would be a side chancery. These transfers are game enders anyway. They win you the fight. These are devastating techniques when used correctly, but you can really see the fatigue hitting me here on my defense. So even though I'm managing to keep some level of offensive capacity open when I'm throwing my punches, you can see how much messier my defenses are. My chin is protruding slightly. I'd be very open to a potential knockout blow myself here, quite shamingly. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Just a little talk through there. Let me know what you think. Check out my other videos, like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff, and I will see you soon. Ta-ta, goodbye, and good luck for now.